Hi, I'm Tom Velez. I'm a professional illustrator, and today I'll be talking about my technique and thought process while drawing Luigi. So here I am blocking in some colors for just some of the base colors. Right now it's just a skin tone, and then I'll come in and do some of the primary colors for Luigi's color theme. Usually I do a grayscale painting beforehand, but with this one, Luigi, his colors are pretty much, everyone knows what they are. They're green, blue overalls. So I just wanted to start right in the color phase on this. And here it's just blocking in the colors, making the silhouette, putting in some shadows. Those shadows there are blue because of the sky background. Usually, like when you're outside, the shadows are usually a little bluer. I started this illustration a little differently. The original sketch was something that was in my sketchbook, so all I did was I scanned it and then made it the size that I needed, and then just started painting over it. So actually, the sketch is on the top layer, and all the colors are going in on a bottom layer underneath it. The sketch was probably set to multiply, so that only the dark elements of it come through, and anything that's white, uh, it becomes completely transparent. So here also, I'm just adjusting that face color, putting some life into some of the features. More specifically, putting some red in the nose, cheeks, and eyes because that's where blood kind of pools up underneath the skin. And now I'm painting over the sketch layer, which is that layer that I scanned in for my sketchbook. Just painting over it, just trying to get rid of some of those lines. I like to use the sketch as pretty much like a guide. So again, just painting in some of the colors. So the reason I did this Luigi, I originally had a Mario in the same style, like more of like a realistic. I wouldn't say completely realistic because some of these attributes are exaggerated, like pretty much everything: the neck, the nose, the mustache, the eyes, the ears. Every aspect of it is exaggerated, but compared to the style that the Mario Brothers are usually drawn in within the video game world, yeah, this would be a little bit more realistic. So yeah, I had an illustration of Mario, and it went over so well. I kept getting requests just to do like a companion piece. So I eventually got time to do it, and it came out pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. I was actually part of an art show in New York City, and they saw the Mario piece and they really liked it. And they were the ones that specifically asked if I can do a companion piece to it, because I was going to have several of my paintings hung. So two of them were the Luigi and the Mario. So that's why I made this. It was specifically for that. And in the long run, I'm really glad I did it because I'm really happy the way the two go together. And when I did the Mario piece, there was like a whole backstory to it. I wrote something. I don't have it on me right now. I could find it eventually, but I wrote a short story of like why he looked the way he did. So basically, the idea is that Mario is a real person living in the real world. He's really a plumber. And the reason I did this is because I always thought the Nintendo story of like how I just like to think about the pitch meeting for the whole concept of the Mario game. It makes no sense. it's like, all right, so we got the main character. He's gonna be a plumber that stomps turtles, and he gets bigger if he takes some mushrooms, and he's chasing down a princess, and none of it makes any sense. Oh yeah, and he's Italian for some reason. Like it doesn't make any sense. So I thought it would make more sense, like that whole story, if Mario was actually a real person, and the the way he gets to that fantastical land of the Super Mario Brothers with like the turtles and the Goombas and all that and King Koopa, is he actually indulges in hallucinogenics, preferably mushrooms. So yeah, his life is just he has a preference. So a preference of drugs, which would be mushrooms. So when he first starts taking them, like the hallucinations aren't that great. That's why we get like the 8-bit games. But the more and more he takes them, the better the graphics get, and we're playing his hallucinations. So the idea is that like he takes these drugs and or these mushrooms, and he becomes more of who he is in his regular life. And the whole story ends with he's in love with this girl who ends up being Peach, and he ends up like doing a job at her house, and then just realizes that the whole world that he manifested isn't real; it's in his head. And it ends with him standing in her bathroom. He's in her bathroom, standing in her green toilet, because of the green pipes in his other world. So that's where the whole idea came from, to have the lore of Super Mario Bros. Really exist, but with a little bit of a twist. And with that, like that's how Luigi came, because he obviously does have a brother, and I just kind of pictured them as a two brothers working together, and they're both just a little too weathered. They've both been around the block. They've been doing it a long time. And that's the other thing. Mario, I think it said that he's supposed to be 25, like even still, 25 years old. And if he was 25 years old when the games came out in like 1985, it's 2020. Like he should be aging a little bit, but obviously he's not going to be because the franchise. But if you take that into effect, that is the first time he came out onto the scene was 1985. Yes, maybe he was 25 then, but now he's got some years on him, and I want to reflect that in the illustration. And the other thing is like the Mario we see now, ever since like Super Mario for Super NES, but I guess Mario 64, that style, like is even prevalent today, and I don't think it really. I mean, for what I'm going for, it doesn't work because he's drawn like a little boy. Like even though he's supposed to be a plumber man, he has little boy features, and I just wanted to draw the two characters like truly how they would look. And some of that inspiration came from some construction jobs I used to work back when I was like, I would take these odd jobs when I was 16 to like even 22 years old. Just working construction, be it like floor covering or just regular construction or doing some stagehand stuff in New York City. You would meet these guys on the job, and they're salt of the earth. They're awesome dudes, but they've been living hard. Like they get their paycheck, they spend it on a good time. They always have like the best stories, but you can see the years of their lives on their face. Like they have lived hard. And so when I was doing both, when I first did Mario, that's where the inspiration came, but I really felt like it really shined through on the Luigi one. Because some of those guys that I met, and they're great guys, a lot of really funny stories, and Like they'll barely know you, but treat you like you've been friends with them forever. And yeah, they just have some of the craziest stories. But the Luigi one specifically reminded me of not a specific person, but a specific kind of person that I would meet on those jobs. Like always on a smoke break, always shooting the shit. But yeah, it just reminded me of a certain kind of guy I would meet on those jobs. They're always super cool. So that's pretty much like the backstory to the idea of this painting. I guess I'll jump back into like the technical stuff. So I guess now the face is in a pretty good spot with the sketch almost completely gone. I just kept painting over, bringing up some of that more saturated colors into the face just so he doesn't look like a corpse. I've noticed sometimes in my paintings in earlier stages, but more prevalently in some artists' work, if they start from a grayscale painting and then they bring it to color, that sometimes, if it's not done correctly, it just looks a little too desaturated and the character looks a little on the undead side, like doesn't have a lot of life in their face. So, excuse me. Didn't really run into that problem here because I did start straight into the color phase. But there, I haven't done the step yet where I bring kind of, I guess it's coming right now, where I bring more life into the painting, and that's specifically because of it's a little trick that I learned. It's more of like a color theory. It's not even a trick. It's just color theory, especially for portraits. So when you're working on a portrait, there's certain colors that happen in different sections of the face. For men specifically, at their jawline and chin and like above their top lip, anywhere there would be like a beard or stubble, that usually has a blue hue to it because that is the color of the hair follicles showing from underneath the skin. So it's not like blue like the blue that's in the background. It's very subtle. And the way that I like to do it is I make a color layer blending option. I put the blue in. There's no specific blue. I just kind of eyeball it. And then I'll lay it in. And then I'll take the opacity and just bring it all the way down. It's the same technique I use for whenever I'm trying to do like a darker color, but I don't want to go too, or a darker tone value, but I don't want to go too dark, where I'll just take a black and then just bring the opacity all the way down that layer. It's the same thing I do for the colors in the face. So for a man, again, the beard has a slightly blue hue to it, and then the eyes, nose, ears, and lips have a red hue to it. And the reason for that is because the reason for that is because the blood that is in your face, the ears, the ears and nose specifically are made of cartilage, so the blood goes right to the skin on that, compared to like the forehead where you can touch your forehead and you can feel it, where the forehead skull or bone is right up against the skin. So for the forehead, it's actually a slightly yellow tone that you want to put in there. So for the eyes, it would be more red because the eye sockets, they're hollow. Like that's why you can like push down through your eye socket. It's always good to, whenever you're trying to learn aspects of like a face or characteristics of a face, you can feel on your own face like where the cheekbones are, where certain bones start and end, specifically like in the jaw, and the eye socket is a good example as well. And the bend of your nose, that's how you can tell, like, obviously there is a bone in there or a piece of cartilage actually in the bridge of it, but it's not bone. So that's why when I guess when a person gets like an old trick in a cartoon is when someone's drunk or something, their nose gets red, or when someone gets embarrassed, their ears get redder, or when someone hasn't slept well, they have bags on their eyes. That's because of the surplus and lack of blood that's in those parts of the face. So here I did do an adjustment where I brought even more of a red tone into the face. And now he definitely looks alive. It's not that pale, almost yellow that I started with. And that's the thing when I do these paintings. I'm never quite sure about the colors. I'm always kind of discovering them as I go along. And whenever I do pick a color, I usually lay it in and then I might adjust it with a hue and saturation adjustment or color balance adjustment just to get closer to what I'm going for. Painting in color, I feel, it's such a different animal than doing grayscale or black and white painting, because black and white, you're just focusing on tones, but color, you're focusing on color relationships, and it can change a painting and change a mood altogether. So here I'm just building the L on Luigi's hat. It's pretty simple. I was going for a patch more than just a screen printed L on there. Just trying to make it look a little bit more like real. And again, that's one of those things where I painted in the L, it sat a little flat, so you just make a transformation and go to warp and just adjust it so it looks like it's sitting on the hat rather than it's like just flat on there. I just remembered a comment I usually get when I'm at a Comic-Con and people see this. I usually have this in the Mario hanging at my booth. But a comment I usually get is that people say either Mario or Luigi looks like an uncle they have, which I always think is pretty funny. It always gets a laugh. I like that. Somehow it's resonating with people. The one thing I'm noticing in this now, and I've noticed when I do these video commentaries of just like different little things that I either missed or I would have done differently. But I noticed a step that I kind of have missed here. I do get to it later, but I think I should have got to it earlier, where for some reason when I draw, and I have a feeling it's like the placement of my shoulders and the way I draw, sometimes the sketch comes in a little skewed, and I'm noticing that I have not flipped the canvas yet, which I do a lot more often now. And it's a little trick. I feel like it's something once you start learning to do it, it kind of opens your eyes up to all the errors you make in your drawings. So I haven't flipped it, and right now it looks fine because we've both been looking at this with no kind of like critical eye on it. And that's another thing. I like to like step away from my drawings for a while, just because when you're staring at something for so long, it'll never look wrong, even though even if there are glaring mistakes. And the glaring mistake I'm seeing is that it is a little skewed. It's not huge, but it's something that it will be addressed later, and I'll point it out. But I think it's a little too far in the painting. Honestly, I would have liked to have done it earlier, but fortunately, it's a single character portrait. It's not a full scene, so it's not going to ruin it. And it's an easy fix when it's just something like this. So again, just working in some of those shadows. So here, I realized the one side of the face is just too light for it to be making sense for the light, where the light source is coming in. The light source is on the right side of the painting, kind of coming in over his shoulder. So the left side of his face is going to be naturally a little darker, and with natural lighting, ideally, the only light source is supposed to be coming from the sun. You've seen a lot of photography that's not the case, because even for outside shoots, there's multiple lights. They have those reflective panels that bring in like rim lighting and just a secondary light source. Here, I was just focusing on the one light source coming, like daytime lighting. So that left side of his face needs to be a little darker. So here, I noticed I was trying to define the chin a little bit more with some chin lines there, but I feel like, and I keep it there for a little too long, but I eventually get rid of it. And also the stubble hasn't come in yet, which creates a lot of noise down there in that part of the face. But I think it made him just a little too old for what I was going for. And again, I have that blue hue laid over the face. I don't have it on because I just want to paint within the one color scheme of that flesh tan reddish color, and not worry about bringing that blue in yet, because the way I have it organized within the layer panel, that I can just drop it in when I'm ready. I think an important thing is to know when to push certain elements and when to push, no, or not push other elements. For this, because of the long neck and the skinny stature of Luigi, I thought it was a better use of the character design to make that neck a little skinnier, so where the esophagus part of it is more defined. Because like when you look at older men that are on the skinnier side, they have those, like their necks are more like like you can see the elements that like make the muscle that go from the collarbone up behind the ear, and you can see their throat a little more compared to like when I did Mario. It's just a little bit thicker. So that helps bring out his age a little bit. If I was doing a younger version of Luigi. I don't think I would emphasize some of those shadows or make some of those shadows so dark. Even younger people do have definition within their neck, but for older people, it's a little bit more distinguished. Now I'm just cleaning up that shirt. Going back, I really just jump around a lot when I do my paintings. I never just like render out one part of the character. Here I'm using an overlay layer and just I knocked it down to 58% and just putting in some shadows with a soft brush. It really helps when creating like folds instead or slight subtle shadows within the face. It really works well with folds in cloth. It's one of my favorite things to do when I get to those stages. So now I decide that I'm going to do the stubble, which I think really kind of defines his character. It just gives it the little bit of ruggedness that I was looking for. One too many days on the job, that kind of thing. Kind of tired of going from castle to castle looking for the princess. Now what I'm doing now, it's a much lighter stubble. That's from the light highlighting some of the hairs. You'll notice in some pictures that are backlit, here I'm flipping the page and seeing, oh, I made a mistake. But some pictures that are backlit, the hairs will, even if they're like dark, hairs will be highlighted. So that's what I was doing within the stubble for those hairs that like are coming around the chin. Just adding some lighter hair strands to the mustache and eyebrows, and then eventually the hair. Just wrapping that eyelid around the eye there. It's very important when you're painting to think three-dimensionally. Sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around it, and other times you just forget, but the eyeball is a circle and the eyelids go around the eyeball, so they can't just sit on top. You can see I pull out a lot just to like take the whole picture in. So here is where I decide, yeah, that looks a little better. It doesn't look like he's kind of leaning one way anymore. Looks like he's standing up straight. And that was an easy fix there. I imagine if it was an illustration with multiple characters within a scene, couldn't do that because of perspective and where characters sit within the perspective of a drawing. It might, it's better to get that out of the way in the sketch phase and make sure everything's nice and tight. I have been recently doing tighter sketches, and I think it's been helping me in the long run when working on paintings. And again, I have a hairbrush which I knock down to like 50 or 60% when I'm working on the hair, just so it's not like too much in the drawing, and just lightly painting in that mustache, which was a lot of fun to do. Love drawing a big bushy mustache. I've done it more in my sketchbook and stuff, but it was fun to do here. So when doing this character design, there were certain elements that I definitely wanted to portray in this. So when we have Mario, he's a little plumper, and Luigi's taller. So in my Mario drawing, he had that big, like, circle nose almost. With Luigi, I definitely made it a little bit more realistic. It's definitely a caricature for sure, but it's that big, bulbous nose, but a little bit more rigid. Because the Luigi character, it's almost like a stretched out version of Mario. So I wanted to get those stretched out elements. So the longer nose, the long neck, the longer ears with the long earlobes, like those were all elements I wanted to bring in, because those are elements that you do see within like the cartoon version. And to get them to look closer to like a realistic version, I definitely used some reference. I think I pulled some pictures of like older Italian men, or older Mediterranean. I can't say that word right now. I feel like an idiot. But yes, men of that region, and definitely of a certain age. So again, just building on what I already have there. I feel like paintings are a lot like sculpting sometimes. You just keep building on what you have, building and building and building. You're never really done with the painting. You're just finished. Here I'm putting some gray into his hair. With the clothing, it was definitely a choice to have things not tidy. So later on, I'll put some rips in the collar of his shirt. I thought it was important to have the overalls at like different lengths in the straps, because it wouldn't make sense if I put all this time into the face where there's a character. It looks like personal hygiene isn't his biggest concern, or he's missed a few haircuts, where his hat is a little tattered, where then his shirt and his overalls look pristine. I just didn't think it would work well. And with my experience with some plumbers, like they use some clothes that they can get dirty. So I just wanted it to feel real. So later on, I'll put some texture into his clothes that makes it look like they've been around for a few years. Like this is his work shirt. But the different lengths of the overalls, that was it was definitely a specific choice, because I just find that sometimes when things are too uniform, it makes things look a little stale, or just not real. Because no one like is completely, um, what's the word? I guess parallel on both sides. Like I just didn't want to look like a mirrored image. These metal buckles, I guess you can call them, for the overalls. This was definitely a figure it out as I go situation. I went with gold here, but I believe in the end they end up silver. And the reason I changed them is because they were just taking too much away from the actual face. I felt like that gold was bringing your eye down to the bottom of the page, where it's not really that important. And that's another thing to consider. Um, One, when doing an illustration, especially with multiple characters, but also in just a single person portrait, where you want the focus to be. So it doesn't make sense to have something that pulls your eye towards the bottom of the page when the main focus is the character's face. And I do put a good amount of detail into his clothing, but it wasn't at a level that I feel pulls the attention away from up top. So also in this painting, I'm not really erasing anything. I'm just painting over. I feel like erasing things just takes too much time. Not that I'm saying you shouldn't make mistakes and erase things. I just like to paint over them. Is what I'm saying. And the way I have this painting set up is right now there's really not a background. It's just a blue color. That could be just a wall or anything. Later on, I'll put clouds in, and I use a certain method to get them in the painting. And I'll explain that later. But right now, I'm just painting over whatever I need. So when it comes to making, I guess, like an edit to the silhouette, I just paint that blue right in over it. Yes, yeah, it took all that gold out. It just wasn't working. And I made that layer invisible because it wasn't working for me at the time to have it there, and plus I need to finish the shirt and the overalls. I felt like the buckles were better to have in a later part of that painting. And I'm sorry if you're watching this and you're getting dizzy with all the turning of the canvas. It's just the way I draw. I've tried to do these where I don't turn it, and then I have to put my body in a weird position, and then I can't get the lines straight or the way I want them. So it's just a necessary evil. It's just the way it's going to be. I do the same thing when I draw like on pen and paper. That page is turning nonstop. A little trick here, just duplicate the button, just bring it over, and then just transform the other buckle. So here's where I feel like these little details kind of really bring out some of the character. I'm just putting some texture and then creating a mask. Like I block in all that dirt and then I create a mask and take it away and knock down the opacity because you don't want to go overboard with it. You want it to be subtle. So I wanted this shirt to look like it's been stained. He's been wearing it for like 15 years. It's his work shirt. He's been down pipes. He's been in nasty situations. He's been sweating in it. And I wanted to reflect that. So I didn't want it to look like he's got like brand new clothes. Luigi's a warrior. Maybe some grease from Mario Kart. Then again, adding some dirt in. And just adjusting the layers that I'm using. So here is where I'm separating the character from the background because I was kind of painting it all as one thing. So you go into channels, you find a channel that there's good enough contrast, and then you play with the levels and paint in what the white is what ends up being selected. So I saved that channel after I made it, and then I just start painting clouds over the top of the painting. And then you'll see I'll just mask them out where the figure is. And there you go. I definitely recommend like learning more about channels, and I can go more into this in other tutorials because especially working Photoshop, when you want to make certain selections, it really does help. Now this little thing here was one of my favorite parts. I made this logo for the Mario painting, and just as it's something I made, like I found the logo and then recreated the original Super Mario's logo that you see on the home screen when you play the Super Nintendo game, and then I found a screenshot of one of the pipes from the game, and then I recreated them in Illustrator so that they're vectorized and I can make them any size, and then put a little thing, and it's really hard to see now, especially since it's like weathered, but it says certified plumber underneath. So it kind of brings some reality to the character where Mario and Luigi are both plumbers that have their own business, and Super Mario Brothers isn't the name of the video game, it's the name of their plumbing company. So it all goes back to that whole thing of this whole world lives within Mario's mind. Here I'm using a color dodge layer where I select color dodge within the blending options of the layer. And then I fill the whole layer with black, but you won't see any of that. And then you paint in with a lighter color, or I'm using white here. And it just brings like a nice highlight, especially when you're doing like directional lighting, which I'm doing. But the trick is to start with a low opacity brush, because if you start at 100%, you will just blow out any colors that you're looking for or you're trying to get. And then here I did a vivid light layer where I was trying to get just the highlight of some of those mustache hairs coming in, getting hit a certain way with the light. It kind of brings a realistic look of that, the 3D aspect of that mustache, like coming around the face, and the light coming from behind. And here I'm just refining the ear. Ears are funny because they're just pretty much made of cartilage and blood, and so if the light is strong enough, it can shine through. So just messing around with that. And that is the end of the painting. If you made it this far, Congratulations. Thank you very much for checking this video out. And check me out on Patreon, where I will be doing more of these videos. Thank you again for your support, and I'll see you soon.